Imagine a place that has literally seen it all. I'm talking about continuous human habitation, the epic rise and fall of empires, and crushing modern devastation, all stretching back to the very dawn of civilization. In Tel Carmel, there are stone towers standing today that date all the way back to 10,650 BC. It's a timeline so massive it almost breaks your brain, making them the oldest structures of their kind anywhere on Earth.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're stepping past the smoke of the daily news cycle to really explore Syria. We're going to look at this nation not just as a conflict zone, but as the enduring, complex crossroads of human history. It's a place of breathtaking contrasts, where ancient, weathered stones meet the harsh, uncompromising realities of the 21st century.
So let's dive into Part 1, Crossroads of Civilization, the Cradle of Human History.
Situated right there in the Levant, this incredibly fertile land acted like a giant bridge connecting Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Asia Minor. Its impact on us as a species? Absolutely immeasurable. Just to put it in perspective, near modern-day Latakia, the ancient kingdom of Ugarit actually developed the world's earliest known alphabet around 1800 BC. They literally revolutionized how we share knowledge, forever.
And the staying power of these places is just incredible. Aleppo and Damascus are actually among the oldest continuously inhabited cities on the entire planet. Through the rise of the first kings, brutal Roman conquests, and sweeping Mongol invasions, they have stood as silent witnesses to thousands of years of human triumph and tragedy.
Which brings us to Part 2, the March of Empires, a millennia-long battleground.
Because of its immense wealth and highly strategic spot right on the Silk Road, this land became the ultimate geopolitical magnet. We're talking about a ceaseless march of empires. From the Akkadians and the Romans to the massive Islamic conquests, and eventually the Ottomans. Every single one of them layered an incredible density of cultures, religions, and languages across the region, leaving a permanent mark on the Syrian identity.
Now, fast forward with me to the 20th century. As the Ottoman Empire finally collapsed in World War I, European powers basically carved up the Middle East behind closed doors. Placed under a French mandate, colonial strategy deliberately played up internal divisions just to maintain control. It's a chilling reality perfectly captured in this 1920 quote. They were planting seeds of instability that would go on to haunt the nation for decades.
That leads us into Part 3, Independence and the Iron Grip, Decades of Control.
True independence finally came in 1946, but it ushered in a chaotic era of rapid, unpredictable military coups. This paved the way for a radical shift. Following a 1963 overthrow, the Ba'ath Party took the wheel. They systematically purged any opposition, completely outlawed independent politics, and built a rigid, one-party state that totally locked down society, education, and the military.
Then, by 1970, Defense Minister Hafez al-Assad seized power in a bloodless coup. He transformed Syria from a fragile republic into a highly surveyed, hereditary dictatorship. All the wealth, all the military might was concentrated entirely within his family and a very tight circle of loyalists, and it was all ruthlessly enforced by a massive, pervasive secret police network.
This dark era takes us to Part 4, Revolution to Ruin, the Toll of Civil War. After decades of this authoritarian rule, things finally fractured in 2011. An Arab Spring-inspired uprising demanded an end to Ba'athist rule, but the regime's response? Brutal military force. The civil war that followed resulted in a truly staggering reality. More than 600,000 lives lost. And independent organizations have noted that the vast majority of these casualties were inflicted by pro-regime forces, using sieges, barrel bombs, and even chemical weapons on their own people. The war also triggered what the UN called the single biggest humanitarian emergency of our era. Driven by this indiscriminate violence, along with a devastating 36-year record drought, over 14 million people faced acute food insecurity. Think about that. More than half of the country's entire pre-war population was forced to flee their homes, becoming internally displaced persons or refugees. On top of that, the battlefield devolved into this highly complex, multi-sided proxy war. It drew in global superpowers, Kurdish-led forces fighting for autonomy, and extremist factions like ISIS. They capitalized on the chaos to briefly terrorize vast stretches of eastern Syria, at least until an international coalition finally pushed them back.
Moving into Part 5, a historic turning point, the fall of a dynasty.
So after more than a decade of this bloody, grueling stalemate, the landscape suddenly shifted with breathtaking speed in late 2024. In just under 2 weeks, a coalition of opposition and rebel factions advanced rapidly, starting from Aleppo in the north. They swept through Homs, then Homs, and completely encircled Damascus. Cut off from their allies, the regime's military simply melted away. Bashar al-Assad fled, and a 53-year dynasty abruptly collapsed. Just like that.
Now, following the regime's sudden fall, there was this massive political vacuum that had to be filled immediately. By early 2025, a new transitional government was established under President Ahmed al-Sharaa. They ratified a 5-year interim constitution, completely dissolving the old Ba'athist structures and forming an interim parliament to oversee the drafting of a permanent constitution.
But make no mistake, this new leadership faces a truly monumental task. They inherited a state in absolute ruin. Between 2010 and 2023, the Syrian economy contracted by a jaw-dropping 84%. The transitional government now has to rebuild bombed-out infrastructure, restore basic electricity, and somehow dismantle the multi-billion-dollar illicit Captagon drug industry, which had actually become the prior regime's primary source of revenue.
Let's look at Part 6, the enduring Syrian fabric, a tapestry of culture. Because beneath all the political upheaval and the economic ruin, you find the true beating heart of Syria, its incredibly resilient people. Syria is a deep, rich societal mosaic. For centuries, Arabs, Kurds, Assyrians, Armenians, and Circassians, right alongside Sunni Muslims, Alawites, Christians, and Druze, have lived together. Despite the deep, painful fractures of war, this rich, interwoven cultural heritage absolutely remains the foundation of the country. And you know, this profound human diversity is perfectly mirrored in the physical land itself. You have everything from the humid, incredibly lush and fertile stretches of the Mediterranean coast, which yield the country's famous olives and citrus, stretching all the way to the vast, arid plateaus of the eastern steppe. This incredibly dry landscape is cut right through by the ancient, life-giving waters of the Euphrates River. It is a landscape of stark contrasts and rugged, enduring beauty.
Through all the devastation of the past decade, the core identity of Syria has survived. It's a supreme survivor of history, a true cradle of civilization that is currently navigating its most fragile, yet significant modern rebirth.
So, as the Syrian people step out of the dark shadow of war and a half-century of dictatorship, looking toward a completely unwritten tomorrow, we're left to ponder, how will the deep, enduring roots of this ancient, magnificent land guide its future? Thank you for exploring this with us in today's Explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.